I never thought I'd be the guy who got blindsided by infidelity. I always considered myself a pretty perceptive dude. My name is Jake, and I had what most people would call a picture-perfect life. I was married to a beautiful woman named Sarah. We had been together for nearly 8 years, and we had built a cozy little life in our suburban home. Sarah had a demanding job as a marketing manager, while I worked as an IT consultant. Life wasn't always perfect, but we complemented each other well. Or at least I thought we did. In hindsight, I should have seen the signs sooner. Sarah started spending more time at work, coming home late with flimsy excuses that usually revolved around important meetings. I chalked it up to ambition and the stress that comes with climbing the corporate ladder. I guess I was too trusting, too caught up in my own routine, that I didn't question her late nights or the sudden influx of work-related phone calls she took in another room. Looking back now, I see how naive I was. It all came crashing down one Saturday afternoon when I decided to surprise Sarah with a spontaneous picnic at the park. She loved those, and I figured it would be a nice change from the mundane routine we had fallen into. I packed our favorite sandwiches and snacks, loaded the car, and headed home to grab her. But when I got there, I found something that shattered my world. As I walked into our home, I heard laughter coming from our bedroom. It wasn't the kind of laughter you'd expect from a couple who shared a loving moment. It was flirtatious and light, the kind that made my stomach churn. I paused, heart pounding, wondering what was going on. I might have turned around and left, but curiosity got the better of me. I crept down the hall, and as I neared the bedroom door, I could hear Sarah's voice, sweet and playful in a tone I hadn't heard in ages. "Sure, I'll send you the files, but you owe me," she said, her voice laced with a teasing tone. That last line hit me like a ton of bricks. Owe her. I knew the only person who could be on the receiving end of that tone was someone special. My heart raced, and before I knew it, I had pressed my ear to the door. Then I heard it, the unmistakable voice of my lawyer, Mark. "You know I can help you with that, and maybe we can discuss our other business later." The implication was clear. They were flirting, and it felt like a slap to the face. I stumbled back, barely able to process what I just heard. My mind was in overdrive, and I felt sick. I stood there, frozen, trying to wrap my head around the reality of what I just discovered. My wife was cheating on me with my lawyer, no less. I had trusted Mark with our lives, our finances, and now it seemed he was betraying me alongside Sarah. It was all so surreal. I felt like I was living in a twisted episode of a soap opera. In that moment, I went from shock to anger. I could feel the heat rising in my chest. I had to confront them. I took a deep breath and barged into the bedroom, throwing open the door. Sarah jumped back, and Mark turned pale as if he had seen a ghost. The look on their faces was priceless, a mix of shock and guilt. "Jake, what are you doing here?" Sarah stammered, trying to regain her composure. Mark fumbled with his clothes, looking like a deer caught in headlights. "Really? You're going to play dumb now?" I shot back, fury spilling out as I glared at both of them. "You're in my house, in our bed, and you expect me to believe this is just some work-related meeting?" Sarah opened her mouth to speak, but I wasn't having it. I saw right through her. She started with her usual excuses, the same rehearsed lines she must have practiced in front of the bathroom mirror. "Jake, it's not what it looks like. We were just talking about work. You know how demanding my job is." I didn't want to hear it. I was done with her lies. I could feel my heart racing, a mix of anger and betrayal coursing through my veins. I was ready to expose the truth, and this was just the beginning. The confrontation that followed felt like it lasted an eternity. But in reality, it was just a few chaotic minutes where all the air seemed to leave the room. Sarah tried to regain control of the narrative, but her feeble attempts at manipulation fell flat in the face of the undeniable evidence I had overheard. I could see the panic in her eyes. It was a strange mix of guilt and anger, as if she was surprised I would dare to question her actions. "Jake, please, you have to listen to me," she pleaded, her voice rising in pitch, almost as if she were trying to convince herself as much as me. "It's not what it looks like. Mark just wanted some advice on a case. You know how close we've become at work." "Close?" I spat, incredulous. "You're having an affair with my lawyer, Sarah. A man I trusted to help protect our future, our lives. And this is how you repay that trust. Mark stood there, awkwardly shifting from one foot to the other, his face a mix of regret and fear. I could see the guilt etched across his features, but that wasn't enough. This was personal, and I wasn't going to let him off the hook so easily. Do you really think I'm going to buy this pathetic excuse? I continued, trying to keep my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. You think I'm that naive? This isn't just flirting, it's betrayal. You've cheated on me and with someone who was supposed to have my back. Sarah's face twisted in anger as she lunged forward, her arms flailing. It's not like you've been the perfect husband, Jake. You're always working late and you hardly pay attention to me anymore. I needed someone who could understand me. Her words struck a nerve. I felt a mix of anger and sadness at the same time. Sure, I had my faults, but I never imagined she would go looking for comfort in the arms of my lawyer. You don't get to justify this betrayal, I retorted, my voice low and steady. You made a choice and that's on you. Mark, sensing the tension, finally spoke up. Jake, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this to happen, I thought. He hesitated, searching for the right words. I thought it was just a friendly connection. I never intended for it to go this far. Oh, spare me, I interrupted, my tone dripping with disdain. You thought you could have your cake and eat it too. You're just as complicit in this as she is. I turned my gaze back to Sarah. So what's it going to be, Sarah? Are you going to admit what you did, or are we going to keep playing this charade? Okay, fine. Sarah snapped, throwing her hands up in defeat. I'm seeing Mark. We've been seeing each other for months. I didn't want to hurt you, but I couldn't keep lying. I thought we could work on things later. Her voice trailed off, and I could see the realization dawning on her. She had crossed a line that couldn't be undone. The weight of her confession hung in the air like a thick fog. I felt a sense of vindication, but also an overwhelming wave of despair. The woman I had loved, the person I had committed my life to, had chosen someone else. Someone who was not only a betrayal, but a betrayal of trust right from the heart of my own life. After a few moments of silence, I turned and walked out of that room. I needed space to think, to breathe. My mind was racing, and I couldn't fathom what to do next. As I stepped outside, the cool air hit my face, but it did nothing to soothe the turmoil inside me. I felt a mix of anger and sadness coiling within me, battling for dominance. I couldn't believe this was happening. I had always considered myself a rational person, and yet here I was, reeling from a betrayal that I never saw coming. As I sat on the porch steps, I found myself contemplating the future. I could already hear the whispers of doubt and fear in my mind. What would happen now? Would I fight for my marriage, or was it time to cut my losses? I had to figure out my next steps. The pain was raw, but I also felt a flicker of resolve igniting within me. I wouldn't let her get away with this. I needed to take control of my life, starting with protecting what was rightfully mine. I grabbed my phone, my fingers trembling as I began to type a message. I needed to find a new lawyer, someone who would ensure I walked away from this nightmare with what I deserved. I spent the rest of that afternoon wrapped in a haze of shock and anger. The betrayal weighed heavily on me, but I also felt a flicker of determination. I had been blindsided, but I refused to let this define me. I needed to get my life back and make sure Sarah and Mark understood the consequences of their actions. After a few hours of scrolling through my contacts, I finally settled on a friend from college, Lisa. She had recently become a divorce attorney, and I had heard great things about her work. I shot her a text, asking if we could meet up to discuss my situation. Within minutes, she replied with enthusiasm, suggesting we get together for coffee that evening. As I drove to the cafe, I felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. What would I say? How much detail should I share? I didn't want to sound like a sob story, but I also needed her to understand the gravity of my situation. When I arrived, I saw Lisa sitting at a corner table, her eyes lighting up as she waved me over. Jake, it's been ages, she exclaimed as she pulled me into a warm hug. Despite my mood, I felt a small sense of comfort at seeing a familiar face. We exchanged pleasantries before getting down to business. So, what's going on? You don't usually reach out for legal advice, she said, her brow furrowing with concern. I took a deep breath and recounted the events of the day, The confrontation, Sarah's confession, and the fact that she had been cheating on me with my lawyer. I could see Lisa's expression shift from sympathy to fierce determination as I spoke. "Jake, I'm so sorry you're going through this. You deserve so much better," she said, her voice steady. "We can definitely work on getting you what you need in terms of a divorce. I'll make sure you're protected and secure." I nodded, feeling a surge of hope. I need to make sure she doesn't walk away with everything. We bought our house together and I want to make sure I'm not left with nothing. Lisa smiled, her confidence reassuring. "You're going to be just fine. I'll help you gather the evidence we need, and we can build a strong case. You deserve to walk away with what is yours." Over the next hour, we discussed the legal steps I needed to take, and she advised me on how to document everything. It felt refreshing to have someone on my side, someone who understood the law and could help me navigate this mess. As we finished our coffee, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I was taking action, and that made all the difference. After our meeting, I returned home to find Sarah sitting on the couch, her head buried in her hands. Looked up as I entered, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "Jake, can we talk?" she asked, her voice shaky. I almost laughed. "Talk? After everything," but I decided to hear her out. "What more is there to say? You've made your choices." "I know, and I'm so sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant to hurt you. I thought we were growing apart and I was confused. Mark was just someone I could talk to, and then things got out of hand. I didn't want to lose you, I swear." I felt a mix of anger and pity. "You didn't think cheating on me was a bad idea," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. "You thought you could just play both sides, and now you want to talk." "I know I messed up, Jake," she pleaded, her eyes glistening with tears. "Can we at least try to fix this? I want to make it work. I'll do whatever it takes." I shook my head, the weight of her words crashing down on me. "It's too late for that, Sarah. You made your choice. You chose to betray me with someone I trusted. I can't just forget that." Her shoulders sagged, and I could see the realization hitting her hard. I felt a strange satisfaction in it. This was the consequence of her actions, but there was also a heavy sadness. I had loved this woman, and it was painful to see it come to this. "Jake, please don't make any rash decisions," she begged, desperation creeping into her voice. "We can work through this together. Let's go to counseling or something." "I need to think," I said firmly. "I don't know what I want right now." I left her sitting there and went to my office, locking the door behind me. The weight of the day was catching up to me, and I needed some space to think. I could feel my heart racing again, replaying the events over and over in my head. I reflected on my past with Sarah, the good memories, the laughter, the love. And then I remembered her betrayal, the lies, the deceit. Those feelings clashed within me, but one thing was certain. I couldn't stay in this situation. I had to move forward, but the question was how. As night fell, I made a decision. I wouldn't let her get away with this. I would fight for what was mine, and I would make sure she understood the seriousness of her betrayal. I was ready to hire a better lawyer and ensure that in the divorce proceedings she would walk away with nothing. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions. I felt like I was living in a haze, caught between anger, sadness, and determination. I had made a decision to move forward with the divorce, but the reality of it all was overwhelming. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, nor could I escape the echoes of the life I thought I had built with Sarah. I spent hours preparing for the legal battle ahead. With Lisa's help, I started gathering evidence of Sarah's infidelity. It was surreal, collecting text messages, phone records, and even a few photos of them together that had been sent to my phone by an anonymous source. My mind raced as I pieced together the timeline of their affair. I never thought I would be the kind of person to dig into my spouse's private life, but I was fueled by a sense of justice. Every night, I'd stay up late researching divorce laws and cases similar to mine. I wanted to be armed with knowledge, to make sure I wouldn't be taken advantage of in the process. I had gone from being blindsided in my marriage to preparing for battle, and the shift was both empowering and exhausting. Meanwhile, Sarah was persistent in her attempts to talk things out. She would leave me messages pleading for a chance, often accusing me of being cold and distant. Each message felt like another dagger in my heart, yet I remained resolute. I couldn't allow her to manipulate me into feeling guilty. I had to stay focused on what needed to happen next. One night, as I sat at the dining room table sorting through documents, Sarah walked in. Her eyes were puffy from crying, but she had a determined look on her face. "Jake, we need to have a real conversation," she said firmly. I sighed, pushing the papers aside. "What more is there to say, Sarah? You've made your choices. I'm moving forward with the divorce. Can't we at least discuss it?" she begged, her voice tinged with desperation. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. I realize now how much I need you in my life. I'm willing to go to counseling to change. I'm ready to fight for us." Her pleas sounded rehearsed and insincere, like she was trying to convince me of something I was no longer willing to believe. "You had your chance, Sarah. You chose Mark. That choice hurt me in ways I can't even describe. It's too late to keep pretending everything is okay. I made a mistake. I was confused." She nearly shouted, her frustration boiling over. "But I love you, Jake. Can't you see that?" I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm despite the rising tide of emotions. Love isn't enough when it's built on betrayal. It's hard to trust someone who's broken that trust. I don't think I can ever feel the same way about you again. Her expression crumbled, and I could see the realization dawn on her. "So that's it then. You're just going to throw away everything we built together." "It's not everything we built together if it's built on lies," I said, my voice steady. "If you truly cared about us, you wouldn't have cheated. You wouldn't have betrayed me. I'm done talking." With that, I stood up and left the room. I felt a sense of closure washing over me. It was painful, but I knew this was the right decision. I wouldn't allow Sarah to pull me back into the toxic cycle of doubt and insecurity. The next day, I met with Lisa to finalize everything before filing for divorce. She explained the steps involved and reassured me that we had a solid case. "I'll ensure you get what you deserve, Jake," she said, her confidence infectious. "We'll file for a divorce on the grounds of infidelity, and I'll make sure you're protected every step of the way." I felt a surge of hope. This was my chance to take control of my life. I was no longer the victim in this situation. I was the one taking action. I signed the papers, and it felt like a weight was lifting off my shoulders. Over the next few weeks, the divorce proceedings began, and things moved quickly. I had to relive the pain of Sarah's betrayal as we went through the legal process. Each court date felt like a new battle, but I was determined not to back down. I wanted to make sure she understood the consequences of her actions, and I wouldn't rest until I had secured my future. The emotional toll was immense. I would sometimes find myself lying awake at night, wrestling with memories of our happier times. It hurt to think about the love we once shared, but I had to remind myself that love shouldn't come with betrayal. As the final court date approached, I felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. I knew that this would be the moment where I would lay everything on the table, and I hoped it would end in my favor. I spent the night before pacing in my room, rehearsing what I wanted to say, visualizing the judge and Sarah sitting across from me. When the day finally arrived, I dressed sharply, feeling a sense of purpose wash over me as I walked into the courthouse. I could hear my heart pounding as I took a seat, waiting for the proceedings to begin. This was it, the moment I had been preparing for. As I sat there, I couldn't help but wonder what Sarah was thinking. Did she realize the gravity of her actions? Did she understand how deeply she had hurt me? I was ready to face her, ready to show her that I wouldn't back down. The judge entered, and everything fell silent. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. As the judge took his seat, I could feel the tension in the room. Sarah was sitting across from me, looking a bit more put together than I expected, but I could see the stress etched on her face. It was a stark contrast to the confident woman I had once known. Today, she looked vulnerable, and a part of me felt a flicker of pity for her, but I quickly buried that feeling. This was business now, and I had to stay focused. The proceedings began, and Lisa stood up to present our case. She laid out the timeline of events, detailing the evidence we had gathered. I could see Sarah's expression shift from defiance to dread as the details of her affair were laid bare before the court. Each word felt like a victory for me, even as the pain of the betrayal rushed back. When it came time for Sarah to speak, I braced myself. She stood up, her voice shaky as she recounted her side of the story. "I acknowledge that I made a mistake," she said, her eyes glistening with tears. "I never intended to hurt Jake. I was confused about our relationship and I didn't know how to communicate my feelings. I thought I could find something outside of our marriage. Her explanation was filled with self-pity and excuses, and I struggled to listen. I wanted to scream at her for trying to justify her actions, but I held my ground. The judge seemed unimpressed, and I felt a sense of satisfaction in that. She wasn't winning any sympathy from him either. After her testimony, it was my turn to speak. I stood up, my heart racing as I faced the judge. "Your Honor," I began, my voice steady despite the nerves bubbling inside me. "I loved my wife, and I dedicated my life to building a future with her. But she chose to betray that love. Her actions have not only broken our vows but have caused immeasurable emotional pain. I am here today to protect myself and ensure that I walk away with what is rightfully mine." I could see a flicker of approval from the judge as I continued. "I have gathered evidence of her infidelity, and I can no longer trust her. I believe that she should not be entitled to any of our shared assets, considering her choices. I want to move on from this relationship and start anew." The judge nodded, taking notes as I spoke. I could feel the weight of the moment, as if everything I had been through was culminating in this one statement. I had fought for my dignity, and I wouldn't let Sarah's lies overshadow my truth. After I finished speaking, Lisa presented our case for asset division, highlighting how Sarah's choices should impact the ruling. I watched Sarah's face as Lisa outlined the financial implications of the divorce, and I could see her mask of confidence slipping further. When it came time for the judge to make his ruling, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I had done everything I could, but the uncertainty still gnawed at me. The judge deliberated for what felt like an eternity before finally addressing us. "I have reviewed the evidence and testimonies presented today. Based on the circumstances surrounding the case and the actions of both parties, I find that there has been a clear breach of trust. Therefore, I rule in favor of the petitioner. Jake, you will retain the house, and Sarah will receive no financial compensation." Relief washed over me like a wave, and I could barely process what had just happened. I had won, my determination had paid off. I looked at Sarah, and for the first time I saw true defeat in her eyes. There was no more pretense, no more excuses. She had lost everything in her pursuit of something outside our marriage, and now she had to face the consequences. As we exited the courtroom, Sarah turned to me, her voice trembling. "Jake, please, can we at least talk about this?" I shook my head firmly. "There's nothing left to discuss, Sarah. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it." I walked away, feeling lighter with each step. I was finally free from the weight of betrayal, from the lies that had clouded my life for too long. The next few weeks were a mixture of processing my emotions and beginning to rebuild my life. I spent time with friends, reconnected with family, and focused on rediscovering who I was without Sarah. I took small steps toward healing, knowing that it would take time. I often reflected on the journey I had taken, from a trusting husband to someone who had to stand up for himself and demand the respect he deserved. I had learned the hard way about the complexities of love, trust, and betrayal. While the scars from this experience would remain, they also served as a reminder of my strength and resilience. I wouldn't let this define me. Instead, I would use it as fuel to build a better future. And as I began to embrace this new chapter of my life, I felt a sense of hope rekindled within me. I had taken control of my destiny, and I was ready to move forward. As the weeks turned into months, I settled into my new life. The pain of the betrayal still lingered, but I was learning to navigate it. I focused on myself, hitting the gym, taking up hobbies I had neglected, and even putting time into my career. The transformation was gradual, but I could feel the weight I had been carrying start to lift. I moved into a new apartment not far from where I used to live with Sarah. It was refreshing to have a space that was mine alone, filled with new memories rather than echoes of a broken relationship. I painted the walls, bought new furniture, and filled the place with things that made me happy. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of hope creeping back into my life. One evening, while I was enjoying a quiet night in, my phone buzzed with a message from one of Sarah's friends. It was unexpected, and my heart raced as I opened it. "Hey Jake, I just wanted to let you know that Sarah is still really struggling. She's been talking to me about how much she misses you. I think she realizes how big of a mistake she made." I took a moment to process the message. Part of me felt a twinge of sympathy, but the other part reminded me of the pain she had caused. I had moved on, and I was no longer the same person who would be swept back into her world. I replied simply, "I appreciate you reaching out, but I think it's best for both of us to move forward. I've started a new chapter, and I hope she finds her way too." It was a small but significant moment, a testament to how far I had come. I had learned that I couldn't be responsible for someone else's happiness when they had actively chosen to hurt me. My journey wasn't about revenge or dwelling in bitterness. It was about reclaiming my life and finding joy again. As summer rolled in, I found myself spending more time outdoors, enjoying the sunshine and meeting new people. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones. I even began dating again, cautiously dipping my toes back into the world of relationships. It was an exhilarating yet nerve-wracking experience, but I was ready to open my heart again. One evening, I went out with a group of friends to a local bar. As we laughed and shared stories, I felt a sense of belonging wash over me. I wasn't just healing, I was thriving. That night, I met a woman named Emily. She had a bright smile and an infectious laugh that drew me in. We hit it off right away, sharing stories and laughter over drinks. What surprised me was how easy it felt. With Emily, I didn't have to look over my shoulder, worrying about past betrayals. I could be myself, and I could open up again without the ghosts of my former relationship holding me back. As weeks turned into months, Emily and I grew closer. We shared adventures, explored new places, and built a foundation based on trust and mutual respect. The contrast to my past relationship was stark, and it served as a reminder of how important it was to cherish genuine connections. One afternoon, while hiking on a beautiful trail, I found myself reflecting on everything that had transpired. I realized that while the pain of Sarah's betrayal had been profound, it had also led me to a place of growth and resilience. I had learned to value myself and to recognize the importance of trust in a relationship. Eventually, I decided to reach out to Sarah one last time. I wanted to find closure, not for her, but for me. I sent her a message. "I hope you're doing well. I just wanted to say that while I wish you no ill will, I've moved on and found happiness. I hope you can do the same." Her response was surprisingly gracious. "I'm glad to hear that, Jake. I've been working on myself and trying to figure things out. I'm truly sorry for everything. I hope you find all the happiness you deserve." It felt good to let go of the animosity and recognize that we were both on our own paths now. I had learned from my experiences, and I was ready to embrace the future with open arms. As I stood on that trail with Emily, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant colors, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. I had weathered the storm, and now I was standing on the other side, stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever life had in store for me. I learned that healing takes time, but it's also about making conscious choices to move forward. For anyone who finds themselves in a similar situation, remember to prioritize your own happiness. In the end, it's not about revenge. It's about rediscovering joy and building the life you deserve. I had come full circle, and for the first time in a long while, I felt at peace. And that was worth everything.